Hello, and thank you for joining me on another garden episode. This was a rainy day that I just caught out the window, and in this particular episode, I wanted to show what I did with the ginger and turmeric. Unfortunately, the ginger and turmeric got a late start for my garden zone, which is zone 6B, 7A, so I didn't have that great of a harvest. But what I did, once the nights started to get below 60, both ginger and turmeric are tropical plants, so they don't really like the weather when it gets below 60 degrees. So once it was steady below 60, which for this time of year, around the first week of October, our temperatures were consistently below 60 degrees at night. So what I did was just pulled them up from their containers. I tried to dig around the root part of it since both ginger and turmeric are rhizomes. Now for these two turmeric plants, I just did a full harvest on them. I had purchased the two plants from Baker Creek. I was having such a hard time at the beginning of the growing season back in January and February getting turmeric started that I ended up just buying two plants so that I would have some. I still don't think I did that in enough time, so I don't feel that this turmeric really produced well. I know it needs a much longer season than ginger, but I went ahead and harvested the ginger out of this pot. I'm not going to be putting ginger in this pot again next year. I have a new plan for that. But for the turmeric here, now these turmeric came up on their own naturally. I had some pieces of turmeric that didn't sprout, and instead of just getting rid of them, I put them out in the garden in June. Again, way too late for my growing zone. So instead of just getting rid of these again, what I'm going to do with these three plants is send them over to my mother's house. I'm going to pot them up, so I gave them a fresh bag of soil with some fertilizer and bone meal in it. And for all three plants, I potted them up, and I'm going to let them go over to my mother's house. I'm going to give them a full year of growing. Whether they survive or not remains to be seen. I haven't tried this before. Last year, I just cut my plants down when I brought them inside my house, and they didn't quite survive. So I'm going to take the whole plant over to my mother. The reason I'm taking it to her house and not putting it at my house is she has a dedicated grow room in her basement. And since I'm not doing anything in particular or special to try to remove the bugs, being that hers are in the basement, I don't have to worry about a bug infestation in her kitchen like I would for mine, where my plant room is right off of my kitchen. So these are headed over to her house, and hopefully they make it through the winter to come back out in the spring. So once everything was said and done, this was my final harvest for the turmeric. Again, these look much larger on the camera, but they were really, really small rhizomes. And then this is my harvest for the ginger. I did much better with the ginger. Still a disappointing harvest for these, as I had much better, but I didn't have a big expectation of a large harvest since I had so much trouble with them. Next year, I hope to get a faster start or a sooner start so the rhizomes can grow much larger than they did for this season. Moving over to the ceramic pot again. Now this pot is super duper heavy, so moving it is quite a chore. And I wanted to put it somewhere where I wouldn't have to move it again and put a plant in there that would pretty much just sit in there, as this is a very large pot as well. Last spring, I received a white rose bush, which is pretty small and just starting off, and the bucket that it was in was way too small, and I noticed it wasn't thriving. So I'm going to repot that rose bush, well, really climbing rose, into this pot. I feel it'll be much happier here. It's going to get more access to the sun in this pot because it'll sit up higher, and more water because it was very, very dried out at the root. So I went ahead and moved this or transplanted this rose bush into this pot, and we'll see how it does for the next season. I got quite a few whitish pink blooms off of it, unlike the other rose bush, which is more peachy orange. So it's a nice contrast in the front. I do want to decorate the front of the deck with the blooms of the roses, so I'm going to try to still wrap it around the deck itself so that it can do that and have something to attach to. So I'm really trying to just work this into being a healthier plant. I did give it some fertilizer, and after I watered it both at the bottom and at the top, I did come back in and mulch it to set it up for the winter. And that completes this video for this week for the garden. Thank you so much for sticking to the end. Please like and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.